Second. All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening for some of you. Good morning for some of you. My name is Chavez, and I'm the founder of One Stop Borneo Wildlife, and I'm also an administrator of the Borneo Mammal Club. The Borneo Mammal Club is basically a community of people who love mammals on Borneo, where they can learn about mammals of Borneo, share their findings, research, or wildlife photos, and so on. So the thing is, we have so many interesting people in the Borneo Mammal Club, and so many interesting people doing a very interesting work on different fields. Some are working on dolphins, cetaceans, some are working on big animals, some are working on smaller mammals, and so on. So it's good to maybe share people's findings, and you never know how others could get involved or maybe share their findings as well, citizen science, and just learn something new. So that's the objective of these webinar series. So today we have on marine mammals in Brunei, which is also very relevant actually for Borneo, because some of the animals found and around Brunei are also found in other places. And also then we have talks on elephants and pangolins and the Borneo carnivore program. So please stay in touch and join these sessions. Kalimantan as well. A lot of people don't know much about Kalimantan at all. So we'll learn about Kalimantan in a few days. So that's all I want to say from my side. I'll hand it over to Joey now, who is the speaker for today. Joey, you can take over and then you can share screen and you can introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Joey. I'm from Brunei. Let me share my screen before I start. Could you let me know if you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, let me make it full screen. Hang in there. The computer is a bit slow.
Okay, while it's loading, just want to tell everybody later on, if you have questions, we will have a question and discussion session after the talk, or you can also write down in the chat box sometimes, and I'll have a look sometimes. Thank you. I just saw Samantha and Yokmoy and Kensang in the chat box. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, good afternoon again, everyone, or good morning, or good evening. Again, my name is Joey. I am from Brunei. I'll talk a little bit about marine mammal research in Brunei, what's going on now, and what might be in store in the future. Can you hear me clearly? Because sometimes I tend to speak softly. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. And a quick intro about myself. I am from Brunei. I've said that. My academic background is in conservation and wildlife biology. I have a master's in ecology, specializing in marine mammal studies. I am especially interested in whales and dolphins, how these animals interact with the environment, how human activities impact these animals, and related conservation issues. So most of the work I've been involved in so far were outside Brunei. So when I came home a couple of years ago, I started to wonder if we have any marine mammals research going on here. Well, when I say research, I meant scientists actively going out to the field to collect data, and then they analyze data, interpreting them, and which would eventually lead to some kind of research output. But unfortunately, what I found is that no one is studying them here. So what I do when there's no research, I did the only thing that I can do and started my own initiative to investigate. So first, I wanted to look at whether there were any historical records of marine mammal occurrence in Brunei. And I started with looking in the literature and scientific papers. I found that there were very, very few of them, so few that you can count with just one hand. And out of this three that I listed here, I have only read the most recent one, Bisley and Jefferson, that was published in 1997. I said that it's the most recent, but by scientific papers standards, some of you may know, any papers that were published more than 10 years ago are considered old. So a 1997 paper is actually very old. But as far as I know, this paper remains the only one that contains the most comprehensive, scientifically documented data on marine mammal and in Brunei. It's a very good paper. It doesn't just talk about Brunei. Here's a figure from the paper itself showing the locations of live sightings and strandings along the northern coast of Borneo and a little bit on Kalimantan. So if you're interested, I would definitely recommend reading this paper here. I also look into secondary sources, so like books and reports. Again, there are very few of this, and they're not exactly recent. This one here, this report by Elkin in 1991, it is a very interesting one. It documents what is called a Sea-Watch project. So the story was that a group of people, they found a stranded spinner dolphin along on one of the beaches here in Brunei. And in fact, that was the first ever recorded spinner dolphins in Brunei. These people, they rescue it and care for it for a few days, but sadly, it has to be euthanized. It was a sad story, but it was this discovery that led to these people um, to start documenting marine wildlife in Brunei. And these people were in a unique position because they work for the oil and gas industry, and they had to fly to offshore installation by helicopters. So they were making observations from helicopters, which is one of the aerial surveys is one of the way that scientists actually use to study marine mammals. So they were doing that, and they were also making observations from offshore installations and also from the vessels that they were on. They have a really impressive list of marine wildlife sightings, including marine mammals. I was very impressed by it, even though it's a non-scientific report. And they have this really cute illustration, like the figure that you can see here. I don't know if it's hand drawn or computer generated, but they're trying to depict a group of dolphins and turn out to be whales and turn out to be some chubby whales, chubby looking whales. And I had to chuckle when I was reading this report. And then I also look up in the news archives to see if there were any reports of marine mammal sightings in the past. Most of them were of strandings, and they are very informative, but there are always issues with species identification. So, for example, in the picture that you see on the left side, the headline says baby whale, but it was actually a famous porpoise. And other news articles, they mainly say unidentified dolphin, unidentified whale. So a lot of issues with species ID, and unless they have a picture like the one on the left, I wouldn't be able to identify this species as well. The Brunei Museum has a small collection of skeletal remains of marine mammals. I paid a visit to the museum a couple of years ago, and the collection itself is great, but I found that they have some errors in the ID labels of some of the specimens, not all. For example, the picture on the right side, the museum labeled it as a gray big whale, but documented the stranding event, which was where the specimen came from. It says that it was a curious big whale. So I got confused, and I contacted the first responders to ask them. And we asked the whale expert who identified this dolphin, and he confirmed to us that it was a Blaine-Wills big whale. So there was a lot of confusion with the species ID, and I have no idea why the museum ID'd it as Grace Big Whale. But that's another mystery for another day. I haven't been back to the museum in the past years, so I don't know if they've changed it or anything. And the picture on the left side shows you the skull of a baleen whale. But there are actually two, one in the foreground, another one in the background. The one in the foreground is labeled as a minke whale, and the one at the back, a Brutus whale. But again, the labels had no description on the animals itself or the origin of the specimens. So I had no information where the specimen came from, and I don't have the technical knowledge to ID the skull, so I might need to check with my more knowledgeable colleagues to see if they could identify these animals. Remember when you were young that your parents would tell you to not talk to strangers? But I did just that, and I contacted strangers like yourself on social media who posted marine mammal sightings in Brunei waters just to get more information. And it was actually how I got to know Chavez. We've never met in person, but we've known each other for a few years now. And it was also this way that I got into contact. I don't know whether it was through Chavez or it was me directly to the fisherman, but I got into contact with this fisherman who accidentally caught an Irrawaddy dolphin in his fishing gear. Fortunately, the animal was still alive when he found it, so he cut the ropes off and freed it. And he told me that there were other dolphins, like 10 or 20, if I remember correctly, waiting, just hanging around the area, waiting for the animal to be freed. So it was a sad but heartwarming story with a happy ending. So without social media, I wouldn't be able to know this. And also by chance, I got into contact with the former chairperson, Hans and Chavez, you know him. Um, uh, he was a former chairperson of a local organization called the Panaga Natural History Society, which is based in an area in Brunei called Panaga, which is really close to where I live, like 10 minutes away. And they have been documenting wildlife, not just marine wildlife, but all sorts of wildlife in Brunei since 1987, if I'm not mistaken. So I asked if I could look at the records to see if they had any marine mammal sightings, and in fact they did. They had quite a few, and I think about a quarter of the records that I have today are from this organization. They've been doing a really good work. And back in 2013, I was employed as a marine mammal observer for a survey offshore Brunei for the oil and gas industry. So I cannot disclose too much information about the survey because I've signed a secrecy agreement. But what I can tell you is it was an environmental survey, so not just a marine mammal focus. And we were in relatively deep waters, up to 1,000 meters. The survey itself lasted for around 2 weeks. I rotated a shift with a colleague, so he was doing 1 week and I was doing another week. And we had a total of 17 sightings between him and myself, but he had 4 sightings and I had 13, so I was luckier. And we only saw dolphin species, but no whales. I might have seen a whale, but I cannot confirm because I just saw a blow like once, and then it disappeared, and it was really far away, and it was dark, so I couldn't confirm. So maybe I have seen a whale, maybe I have not. But well, in the records, I say that there were no whales. And I saw short fin pilot whales. Pilot whales are not whales, they are dolphins. Some of you might already know, but sometimes when I tell people this, it blows their minds away. Like killer whales, they're not whales, they're dolphin species. And I saw spinner dolphins and pantropical spotted dolphins. My colleagues saw bottlenose dolphins. This is really interesting because The survey itself was not continuous. My colleagues spent about a week in late April, and my survey was in mid-May. Even though the duration was similar, it was in a similar season. We had a completely different set of species and different number of sightings. So it was something. It was an interesting observation. So what I've told you so far was how I try and collect data in the absence of research from other people and other than the survey I did myself. So what did I do with all this data? With some help, a database was created to record all these sightings. The database is simply an Excel sheet. I don't have a more sophisticated way to do this. But this database records all the known marine mammal sightings in Brunei since 1989. So the oldest record I have was in 1989. And with all these reports that I have up to 2013, my colleague and I compiled a country report that we submitted, and it was published in a document called the Report of the Third Southeast Asian Marine Mammal Symposium that was published in 2015. If you're interested, you just have to Google the title of this report and you should be able to find a link to the report. It doesn't just tell you about marine mammals in Brunei, it also has information on marine mammals from other Southeast Asian countries and also the greater region, including Australia, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau. So if you're interested, I would recommend looking for this document. I found a similar report that was published in 2002. When I was reading through this report, everyone else, I mean, every other countries had like 5, 10 pages of information in the report, but the section on Brunei had, was only this little snip, the size of this little snip that I show you here with 8 words, like no new information. That was in 2002. It was quite sad. But fast forward to more than a decade later, now we know that we have around 15 species of marine mammals in Brunei, with at least 15 confirmed. And until today, I have 97 sightings in my database. Maybe there are more. It's just that I'm not aware, because if people don't report them, or like maybe a 17-year-old fisherman went out fishing, saw dolphins, but he doesn't have a smartphone, he doesn't post it, and I wouldn't know. So maybe there are even more. I'm sure there are more. And I was supposed to go on another offshore survey earlier this year, but because of the virus pandemic, I had to be canceled. So I could have had more sightings and more information, but sadly, I don't know if it will be resumed, or I don't know. We'll see. And what do we have in Brunei? What do we know so far? We have the dugong, mostly seen in and around Brunei Bay. We also have the pygmy killer whale, which is actually the latest species to be recorded for Brunei. I think it was recorded back in 2015. It was a stranding. It's stranded alive, but sadly it died. We have the short-fin pilot whales, the Blaine whale's big whale that I mentioned earlier, and then pygmy sperm whale, one of my favorites, peculiar looking. I think it looks more like a shark than a whale. And then we have the Brutus whale. I suspect that it might be the most common large baleen whale in our waters, but I don't have the data to back that out. It's a tropical species, so I wouldn't be surprised if we have a lot of these species in our waters. And then we have the more commonly seen bottlenose, Aerowodes, and humpback dolphins, and Finus porpoise. My Finus porpoise disappeared. Here it is. And then the less commonly seen offshore species, the rough-toothed dolphins. We had a stranding back in, I can't remember now, maybe 2012 or 11. but that one was rescued, so that was a happy story. And we had spinner dolphins, pantropical spotted dolphins, and then the rhesus dolphin and minke whale each had one record in a database, but because there were no conclusive evidence that the sightings was actually of this species, so right now I am listing it as unconfirmed until there are further evidence. And here is a graph just to show you a general overview of all the records since 1989 up until today. So broken down by year and also by whether it was live sighting or stranding. You can see two spikes here in two different periods. And the first spike was in the period between 1989 and 91, and that was because of the Sea-Watch project. Because more people were paying attention, more observations were made, more reports coming in. Hence why there were more reports in that year. And then the second spike was the offshore survey in 2015. And everything in between was just less than 5. I'm not saying that in those years with fewer sightings, there were fewer animals out there. It's just that no one's paying attention, or if there was a stranding, no one came across it, and it went unreported. So basically, it was just that. And here's a map that I created myself to show you the general area of where the sightings and strandings were reported to be. Please note that these are not exact locations because I don't have the GPS coordinates of the sightings. And you can see that we actually have quite a lot of sightings, but this was a 30-year report, so it was all combined into one. And we have sightings in coastal waters and offshore waters and strandings all along the coast. It may seem like there are more strandings along the light coast on the western side, but again, this was because it was perhaps there were more people here who are paying attention. Like I told you that the Panaga Natural History Society, they are based in this area. So perhaps it's just that more people are paying attention, so more sightings. And quite a few sightings in and around Brunei Bay, along the Brunei Muara coast. And then there are some offshore sightings that was from my offshore survey, and I put a question mark because they're not the exact location, and I'm not supposed to disclose the location. So, as a yeah, I would move quickly. If you want to look at the map again, you can let me know in a question and answer session later. Well, actually, that is all I have to tell you about the current status of marine mammal research in Brunei. Honestly, I'm not doing much right now given the situation, and also because I'm doing this in my spare time. I'm not employed in any organization to do this research. It was out of my own interest. Well, definitely I'll be maintaining a sightings database for the time being, and I would like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to the audience that if you are based in Brunei, or if you know anyone who are based in Brunei, to please let me know. If you or any other people come across any marine mammals in Brunei waters, I would really appreciate it. I mean, I would credit you for the observation, and if there are any photographs, I would credit you, and I wouldn't publish anything without your permission. And I have been thinking about writing a paper, maybe about well, based on the information that I have. So basically, what I've told you. But writing a paper requires a lot of time and commitment. I've just submitted the paper 2 days ago. It wasn't on marine mammals in Brunei, but my other work. And I spent nearly 8 months working on that paper and on top of doing other things in life. So I want to do it. I want to write a paper, but we'll see if I get any time. And conducting research surveys is something that I have been thinking of doing for many, many, many years. But again, like I said, I lack the resources and also funding, money. Research needs a lot of money. And if you look at the paper, the figure here, it was from a recent paper that studied Irrawaddy dolphins within the Malaysian side of Brunei Bay. And if you look at the red arrow, they had quite a few sightings near the border to Brunei. So I suspect that if we run surveys around this area in Bruneian waters, we would get a few sightings of Irrawaddy dolphins at least, because dolphins, I guess, they would move between borders. They don't need a passport. They won't be quarantined for 14 days. So I think these animals actually move across the borders. So we might see quite a few of them. And with that, let's end my talk, and I would like to end it with two excerpts from Bisley and Jefferson, which perfectly describe the current situation of marine mammal research in Brunei right now. And again, a shout out, I won't read it again. And I thank you for your interest in this talk and your time in listening. I think we have some time for questions and answer if you have any, and I'll give the floor back to Charlotte to host right now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Joy. Maybe you can put your screen out, unshare the screen. So thank you so much for this very informative talk on Brunei's marine mammals. You know, we really do not know much about marine mammals. So what you just said, shared today about Brunei was fantastic, you know, and even my own personal records have been just through our own surveys, which were not looking for dolphins, but other animals like proboscis monkeys or mudskippers, actually. So we accidentally found them and we always shared it with you. And yeah, so it will be great to do more work. So I think now we'll let the floor be open for questions. So there's two ways to do it. Either look on your top right, you can raise finger. So that means you want to ask a question or maybe give a reaction, which is on the bottom of your screen on the right, like this, thumbs up on my screen, hello there. That means you want to ask a question. So if anybody has a question, please do so. Please raise your hand. Okay, Mala. Unmute yourself, Mala. And then after that, Kevin. Okay, let me help you maybe. Okay, after that, Jess.
Got it.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Hi, it was a very interesting talk. Thank you for the information and the time shared with us today. I'm very curious to know about your bride whale, your bride whale sighting. Was that a live or a stranded species that you recorded?
Oop.
Yeah, you're on.
Was it disconnected? Because you dropped off for a little while.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
yeah.
So about the bride whale.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it a live or a stranded sighting?
It was caught in some fishing gear in a fish farm.
Okay.
And they found it alive, but it was trapped because I think some kind of fishing gear was holding it down. And
okay.
It was actually from a news article, so I don't have the full information.
Okay.
But
yeah, because I'm just very curious. Have you heard of pygmy bride whales?
Yes,
because we have some sightings when we were diving, but not in Sabah waters, in Thai waters. So I'm curious to know whether that bride whale could be a pygmy species or would it have been a full-grown bride whale? Not
Well,
sure, right?
yeah, not sure.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all the information I have is based on an article, and it did
Yeah.
say that there was someone who is sort of experienced by the name of Mr. Norris who
Okay.
identified that well. Because at first, there were two articles on two different days, and on the first day it says it was identified as a minke whale, and I don't know who made that identification. And then the second day, another article came out saying that someone identified as a Brutus whale.
Okay.
And
Okay. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
oh yeah, okay. Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Because I was just curious about the pygmy and the fully grown one.
Right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mala. So that was the Stranded Live. It was both.
Yes.
Okay. And maybe, Mala, after this COVID-19 is over, you could head over to Brunei and do some surveys. I'll give you some boatman's numbers. Have some fun. But we'll go
Yeah,
to
we will.
Lavas. We'll go to Lavas and do a survey from Brunei, Sabah, Sarawak side.
Sabah's
Okay.
area, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll
Sarawak's
drive over.
area.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So next one, Mr. Kevin.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the talk, Joey. I work as a guide, so I bring people, clients to Southeast Asia, primarily for their holidays, but it's also to expose them to wildlife, forests, those sorts of things. I use that opportunity in encouraging them to become aware of conservation and looking after animals and being more aware when they go back home. My question to you is, you've mentioned the threat of fishermen and fishing nets and those sorts of things to marine life. But what other threats are there that I can then share that with clients?
Wow, that's a very good question. In fact, I'm still trying to find out myself. Well, I'll start with the general one. The main threats to cetaceans, big and small, right now are mainly entanglements in fishing gear, ship strikes, and other things like noise from shipping or the oil and gas industry. So in Brunei, I would guess that it's all my guess because there's no research. The biggest threat, I think, would be from the oil and gas industry, to be honest, from exploration, seismic surveys, things like that. And then maybe to a lesser extent, entanglement fishing gear. As far as I'm aware, we don't have a large fishing fleet, like commercial fishing fleet. If anyone knows, please correct me, but this is what I know. So, but we have a lot of small-scale fishermen or recreational fishermen, and I don't know much about fishing, but I think sometimes they leave the nets out there, and if the dolphins happen to pass through, or if they try and feed off fishes that are caught in the nets, then they might be at risk being caught in the nets themselves, which is, I think, what happened to the Irrawaddy dolphin that I showed you earlier.
Okay, thank you. When you mention the oil and gas industry, that's due to what exactly the threat? Is that polluting the waters, to just the fact that they're operating? What is the problem there?
Mainly due to seismic exploration. So I don't know if you know, but when they have to go out on a vessel to look for oil and gas in seabed, they have to shoot sonar waves. So these sonar waves coincidentally are in the same frequency. I think that's the word, the frequency with the frequency that the whales themselves use to communicate. So if it's louder than, so if, for example, if you're speaking louder than I am, that I wouldn't be able to hear someone who's next to me, something like that. So for example, so it's mainly from a noise generated by seismic surveys. And also when they are building the platforms, they have to put in tongues. So boom, 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 really loud. And I think the noise from just hammering could go for kilometers. So again, it would must, yeah.
Last question, perhaps, but do you think the industry is sensitive to that?
I have worked in the oil and gas industry before, and before, well, personal opinion, but before I joined, I didn't like the fact that we had the oil and gas industry in the country or anywhere else, just because of my general knowledge about the impacts of this industry on the animals. But when I have joined, I saw that they have quite a robust HSC plan, I would say, to mitigate some of these measures. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but at least they are willing to do something. Like they would pay for someone like me, a marine mammal observer, to go out and just be stationed at a bridge to look out for marine mammals. And let's say that if they're shooting the sound waves and I saw a marine mammal, then perhaps we have to stop and wait for the animal to leave, something like that.
Splendid.
Wow,
Excellent.
that's very good to know as well. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, now next question will be by Jess. Then there are 2 questions in the chat box. So, Jess.
Hi, Joey. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm having problems with my camera. Sorry, apologies for that. But thank you for the talk. It was really interesting. So I do research in the forest in Borneo. So my marine mammal knowledge is 0. But I'm interested in them. It was really, really good to hear what you were saying. And I just wondered, I've gone on a couple of I followed a couple of projects in the Comoros near Africa with a guy who does marine mammal research as well. Similar to you, you know, there's no other research going on and he just wants to know what's out there. And it's very hard, obviously, to start from nothing. And it's really impressive what you guys are doing. And I just wondered if you'd ever thought of using hydrophones or applying for some funding for that. Because the way I've seen him use them, he'll go out to certain points, you know, in a small boat, obviously cut the engine off, drop the hydrophone, and then from what I understand, he gets a sort of a printout of you know, how the sound comes across. It comes across on a chart. I'm sure you've seen them, but you can tell from the signal of the pattern. Quite a lot of the time, you can tell what species are there, and it's species that you might not ever see just from the surface because they're not blowing or breaching or anything. And I wondered as well, I suppose in relation as well to your work with the oil and gas industry, if that might be something that they might consider funding because it gives a much better idea perhaps of what's there rather than just what you see at the surface.
Yes, I have a few answers to your questions, really. Well, first of all, yes, it's possible to use hydrophones, but for me, because of my background, I have never had any training in acoustics, so it's an entirely different field, I would say, even though it's also something that a method that is used in the marine mammal field, but you have to have quite an extensive training, at least something basic to understand what's going on with acoustics. And from what I understand is that you need quite a few years of experience to actually tell the species or how far the animals are away based on the graphs that you see on the computer generated by the hydrophones. So for me, they are just streaks across the computer screen. But yeah, it's possible, but I don't have the training now, and I'm interested in getting training. Maybe it can happen in the future, or if I can get a colleague who is more knowledgeable with acoustic, I could get someone on board. But right now, it's not in the plan yet, but of course it's possible. And
Yes, do ask how expensive is this setup?
I have no idea, but the last survey that I went on, which was a survey for the oil and gas industry, the guy who worked on the acoustic side of things, he was carrying maybe 10,000 euros worth of equipment. So I don't have any idea how much of that is equipment itself, or if it's a part of it is something else. So I could say it's expensive. And I think I have another answer to Jess' question. Now I need to remember. You were saying, maybe you remind me again, you were saying that maybe the oil and gas industry could fund
Well,
something
I wondered
like
if, because I'm guessing that obviously this stuff is expensive, and so I wondered if perhaps if it was something you were interested in doing, perhaps a way of doing it might be getting the funding through them, because they might be able to provide the training and the equipment, because it would ultimately benefit, you know, their image, and if they're trying to be socially conscious, etc.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could try. I could always try. I mean, I have some contacts, but well, contacts through my colleagues. Well, I guess I have to first come up with a robust research proposal of some sort and to convince them why they should be spending 10,000 euros on me and maybe an additional 10,000 for, I don't know, hopefully my salary, something like that. But it's something that's possible. I mean, there's all sorts of possibility if people are just open to it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. That's really interesting.
Thank you for your question.
Jess, when you come back to Borneo, we'll go for a marine mammal survey. Just
I would love
behind
that.
our backyard, yeah?
I'll see if I can bring my friend. He can come and train you, Joey, on the.
Okay, yeah, great.
And Joey, have you ever thought of the fact that maybe you could do a bit of conservation tourism trips in the Brunei, for example, just run a boat trip? I'm sure there's so many people in PNHS, Brunei Nature Society in Bandar, they would come and join you. They would pay for the boat, so it's a free survey for you basically, and maybe on top of that, you'll get some small allowance as well. But yeah, just to cover the boat cost, that's, I think, very easy to do. Would you think of that?
Oh, definitely. I've been thinking about it for many years, and well, I think the hardest part is the first step, like just getting started, like just contacting. I mean, even contacting someone to hire a boat. I mean, for me, it's difficult. I mean, for me, maybe not for you, but for me, that's difficult, and I think I need to go out there and ask around and things like that. And also, something that's very important is that we have to train the boat driver to drive consciously around the dolphins, because there have been research and there are ways that you should and should not drive around dolphins, so not to disturb them. So it's before we even start the conservation trip, we have to train people up first.
Yeah, maybe you can see our boatman drivers here sometimes, and and you can see if you can learn something from there, and I can give you some boatman contacts in Brunei as a start. Okay, who we have been working for almost 10 years. So I'll give you that.
Okay.
Just remind me after this talk. Okay, so the first question from the chat box is by Yuk Mui. The question is, are there any protected marine parks in Brunei? What are the major threats to marine mammals in Brunei waters? I think the second question has been answered, but the first one.
Yes, they are. I again, this is something that I only found out by doing literature research, but apparently Brunei have drafted up a couple of marine protected areas just along the coast. I don't know if they have been put into effect yet. I mean, put into legislation, so to say, to make it legal. But these marine parks are based on coral reefs, if I'm not mistaken. So they're designed to protect the coral reefs. And well, of course, these marine parks, even though they're not designed to protect marine mammals, I mean, other animals, not just marine mammals, that would benefit from just the protection that is given to this area if they come in and fit in this area. And then if the legislation says that you cannot fish in this area, then a lot of animals would actually benefit from them. So well, the simple answer is yes, we have marine protected areas, but it's meant for coral reefs, I believe.
Maybe with your data, you can pass it to the government and say, hey, why not make the Brunei Bay, for example, a marine protected site? We have seagrass, dugongs, so many species there. I even heard it's like a eating ground for turtles and hammerhead sharks over there, apparently. So you never know, you could send it to the AG office.
Well, first I need some connections into the government.
Okay, I'll give you those contacts as well.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Contacts, governments. Okay. All right. Perfect. So, okay. So the next question is by Jared. What are the causes for the marine mammal strandings in Brunei? Is it linked to noise pollution here?
Again, something that I have been trying to find out. So whenever there are strandings, I try and check if there are any external injuries that we can see. things that you can see are perhaps propeller scars. So if a boat hit it, there's a big chance that it gets caught by the propellers. So you get a series of parallel cuts on the body. So that's a telltale sign of a ship strike. And entanglements, if you see fishing gear hanging off the body, or you sometimes if it got caught really tightly, you can see a dent and impressions around the body. Like for example, if you tie a string really tightly on your finger, you could see that there was a string, or what else, or that is some. Well, those two are the most common ones that you can see, but I have not seen any of this on the strandings in Brunei. Um, Noise pollution is a bit harder because you have to perform necropsies to check the insides of the body. Well, I don't know the details, but I think there are some parts of the brain or the hearing system that you can check to look for evidence of exposure to loud noises. Well, I don't have an answer to your question because we don't know. Well, I don't know what are the causes of these trainings. I mean, so far I've only done one necropsy on a famous porpoise, but we did not find anything conclusive. Like everything was clean, there was no external injuries, and when we opened up the insides, it was clean other than some food that will remain in the stomach. So I have no idea what causes all these strandings in Brunei. But again, this is a question for a lot of scientists around the world, like in different parts, like in New Zealand, where you get mass strandings of pilot whales, for example. Sometimes they don't even know what the exact causes of these strandings are. So, yeah.
Thank you. So, does anybody else have any more questions?
I think there, Yok Mui has one more question. Like, are marine mammals protected under any laws in Brunei? I'll answer that straight away. Yes, there's one law called the Wildlife Protection Act, but that was pretty much the only one that I have found so far. I have no idea if there are any other laws, but I think this law is enough for now. It says that you're not allowed to hurt or kill the animals in any way. So for now, this is enough, I guess. I mean, in other places like the U.S., where they have a lot of shipping activities in the coastal waters, they would have more regulations saying that you should slow down if you're driving your boat in areas where whales and dolphins are known to occur in big numbers. We don't have a lot of shipping here, and so that is not a problem so far.
However, there are loopholes to that law. That's why that is an issue. It's a very old law, 1984. It has not been updated since then. On that 1984 Wildlife Enactment Law of Brunei, there's I think only one marine mammal which is on it, and that's the dugong. So
yes, you are right. Yeah.
So that's the thing. So there are loopholes to it. So that's the
I
problem.
agree.
It needs to be updated.
I agree. There's always loopholes to all laws.
So does anybody have any more questions? Honey Roll, nice to see you around here. Can you hear us? If anybody have any questions, please chat, unmute yourself. Question by Yukmoy. So only the dugong is a protected species?
Only the dugong is listed in the law, but it says marine mammals. I don't remember the exact wordings, but it says marine mammals, and then it listed the dugong only. So yeah.
Yokimoi, Brunei is also the only country where the pangolin is not protected legally. So and the sun bear is not protected legally either. So it's a very old law. So yeah, hopefully it will be upgraded one day, maybe in 2084.
Hopefully not.
Okay, so do I have any questions? So do you think there's potential for stranding workshops to give into the public or organizations like Brunei Nature Society, Brew Wild, or Panaga, on how they deal with a stranded animal? Because that day, for example, when I showed you the picture of the stranded whale, kids and people were touching and pushing it away. So
Yeah, I would like to have that one day. I think you know Louisa by now.
yeah,
Yes, yeah. She would be a great candidate to come and help us with training if there are any funding. Again, it all comes down to funding. But yeah, I guess, well, I do have plans to try and contact PNHS and Brewall and know that to see if we can collaborate and maybe do something. And a strandings network would be a good first step, I guess.
nice. Cool. Also suggestion would be whatever you just shared with us today in this presentation slide form. I think if you could ever write this in a paper or just write, not a scientific paper, like just for the newspaper, very general, easy to read, I think it will be very interesting. And yeah, you'll be
Oh,
surprised.
a good idea. I would try and do that.
Yes, I can give you some journalist context as well.
Oh, cool.
Okay. And Yukmoi, yes, pangolins and sunbears are not protected in Brunei legally under the 1984 enactment law. Again, there are loopholes that there is a way to make them protected, but from the law, they're not. So does anybody else have anything else to ask? Joey?
Just briefly, Chavez. Oh, sorry, did I jump in there?
No, it's fine.
No worries.
Oh, sorry. Do those protections that you're talking about, did you say they're just for Brunei, or is that a Borneo-wide or a Malaysian, Indonesian-wide? It's just Brunei. Okay.
Yeah, 1984 enactment
Yeah.
law. Yeah.
Do you happen to know what the protection is for sort of Sabah and Sarawak?
Yes, I think it's pretty good actually for especially Sarawak and Sabah. The animals, a lot of animals are on the checklist, and I have it
Okay.
somewhere, PDF form maybe as well. If you want me to send it over, just remind me on WhatsApp later.
Okay, yeah, that'd be interesting. It's weird that it's because it's obviously talking about quite a small, relatively small chunk of sea off Brunei, and then protections are different, on essentially the same part of land but a different country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody have any more questions, comments? Well, if not, then I'm just going to do a bit of shameless advertising. We have furthermore talks coming up tomorrow. The Borneo Dolphin Project by Chun Sing Wong, who's also in this session. You'll be talking about, Borneo Dolphin Project, which we are actually doing in East Coast Sabah. Then we have a talk by Andrew Hearn on the Borneo Carnivore Program, and then Mammals of Kalimantan as well. And then I'll be talking about pangolins and elephants and plantation coexistence to a mutual benefit. I think that's all for now, which I know. So those are happening in the coming days. Please go to Borneo Mammal Club Facebook group to see the posters, okay, if you want. And I think the links have been sent out to your emails. All the links have been sent out. Yeah, that's all I think all I want to advertise. And yes, Joey, you were right. There's not many places as well to learn about marine mammals except existing field guides like Quentin Phillips, his Mammals of Borneo book. But many of them are just illustrations. So, and many of them are potentially found here, not found here. So the book which is going to come out maybe in a few months, which I'm writing, the photographic one, I think we have like 6 species in it, but we need more, of course. So I think maybe you could create I don't know, so many things to give you, right? So many tasks. Maybe there needs to be like a hotline or email or poster saying if you find a marine mammal record in Brunei, send you an
Sure, if
email.
you can add that in, I'll be happy.
Again, I'm happy to viral it for you in Brunei, and I'm sure people like Honey Roll, Jeremy, and other people from Brunei would be happy to share it. But we need one
Thank
contact
you.
person, like you. So maybe think of a poster in that sense, and I'm sure your records will go up because you see there are resident dolphins in Brunei, in the Brunei Bay and so on. And
I'm
I know
sure.
you said you have like 97 sightings, but they're actually daily sightings in places like Jarudong, for example, or Sarasa. So, but again, how do we know this, right? So maybe it's good to have a platform. So
Yep.
maybe we can talk about this after this. So if no further questions and comments, I just want to say everybody, thank you again. Have a wonderful morning, have a wonderful afternoon or wonderful evening. Um, Yukimoy has said, yes, citizen sites can help in Joey's quest to get more data and sightings, which is very true. And yep, thanks guys for your time. And see you again. So you all can leave this room if you wish. I'm going to, yeah. And I'll have a meeting with Joey